Hi guys, it's
Lauren Daisy.
welcome back to my channel. Hopefully you can't hear the construction that's going on outside. We're just gonna keep moving. I'm gonna play with this next mirror forever. This is so fun. I literally feel like a kid. XOXO, Gossip Girl.
XOXO.
In today's video, we are going to be, it's a doozy, so sit down, get some snacks, because we are going to be ranking every single episode of Gossip Girl. And I'm not talking a tier ranking or ranking this season, no. From 121 up until first place, we are going to be ranking every single episode individually, and it took me a while, but I'm super excited about it. 6 seasons of Gossip Girl, 121 episodes, and we are going to rank them from what I think is the worst episode all the way up until the absolute best episode, my favorite episode of the whole series. Now, obviously, this is personal opinion, this is personal bias, so, don't come for me. This is just my opinion. These are the episodes that I like. My kind of criteria for this going in is there a lot of drama? Is there a lot going on? Big storylines, big plot points, big shocking moments. Also, do I like this episode? Is it centered around characters that I like? Is it one that I enjoy? Is it one that I would actively choose to go back and watch? Or is it one that I just watch in a rewatch? I never skip any episodes of Gossip Girl, but there are ones I obviously enjoy it less than others. That's kind of like how I'm going off of it. Partly, how much do I actually enjoy watching the episode, and also partly how much is going on in the episode, the plot points, and everything like that. It's kind of a mix of the two. For me, I guess the worst episode of Gossip Girl is Salad of the Dead, and that is season 5, episode 20. I don't know what it is about this episode. I just personally don't enjoy it that much. The plot points that are going on in it, I don't really care for. We've got the weird saloon thing that Dan and Blair do to kind of announce that they're a couple, or it's not even announced. It's just like they are a couple, and it's something for them to do together. It's like some weird British thing. I don't even know what's going on. I don't care about that. I don't care in the slightest. I don't care that they're, from opposite worlds and all that stuff. We did that with him and Serena, and this one is just that, but even more extreme, because Blair is even more Upper East Side than Serena was. So that I don't really care for. And there's celebrity cameos where they're talking to that famous couple, and it just feels so unnatural. It feels so forced.
And that is the story of how I got Julian and his Prada loafers to Astoria.
And now I love pork buns. Who knew?
Then Serena is jealous of Lola because she kind of made her, at this point Serena is Gossip Girl, and she made her the new it girl, but then she misses being the it girl, so she tries to sabotage her by ruining jobs for her and all this kind of stuff, and that I also didn't like. So then Lola's on this mission to expose Serena as being Gossip Girl, and also Diana comes forward and says that she's Chuck's mum, even though she's not. Lily and Rufus are fighting over Ivy, which I hate because I love Lily and Rufus and they should have been endgame. So all in all, this episode is just so much stuff that I don't care about, and nothing really comes of it either. We don't get really that much push forward in terms of Dan and Blair. It turns out that Diana isn't even Chuck's mum, so that revelation meant nothing. Lola ends up not actually sabotaging Serena or exposing her as Gossip Girl. So really, this episode is just a filler episode. It's truly pointless, but not even in a fun, good way. There's episodes that are filler, but you still enjoy watching them. But this one, I'd never skip episodes of Gossip Girl, but this one, I could skip it. At 120, we have The Big Sleep No More, and this is season 5, episode 7. And to be honest, this episode is just kind of boring. I'm sorry. It's just kind of boring. Nothing really happens in it. They go to this play thing. And Blair is really awful to Chuck. She's on this mission to prove that he's still a terrible person, and to do that, she tries to seduce him, and he ends up kissing her, but it turns out to be this whole plot where he just wanted to, let her be free, and she wouldn't do that until she was convinced he was a terrible person. It was just weird. The only good bit for me is that Diana actually plays everyone like a fiddle in this episode. Her plan is so well thought out. Or she's full on chess. She's moving all the pieces. She makes Serena think that she's been stood up, and then it messes with Ivy, and then posting it on Gossip Girl, and it just, everything that she did played into her hand so well. That's probably the most enjoyable part of this episode. At 119, we have Enough About Eve, which is season 3, episode 6. So for this one, we've got just the ridiculous Vanessa versus Blair college speech thing. It just doesn't interest me at all. I felt like up until that point, Blair had such a good amount of character growth that to see her be all petty and try and take Vanessa down and also lie to Chuck and use him as a pawn in her games, like, it was all very weird. Like, getting your boyfriend to kiss someone else when he doesn't even want, like, it literally is forced on him so that you can have a speech, and like just lying to him. And she has this whole thing about Vanessa saying that she's so much better than her, and I just feel like we'd moved past that. And yeah, I just don't really care for it. I just find it a really weird storyline that they just threw in there. And I find it a bit of a tough watch. And then because of that, we've got this whole confusion with Dan and Olivia, where she thinks he doesn't want her parents to meet her, but he does. And like, it's just an episode all about miscommunication, basically. And it's just a bit boring. And also Carter ends up breaking up with Serena in this episode because she settled his debt for him when he wanted to kind of settle it himself and prove himself, which again, I just thought was all a bit ridiculous. I get that it's a pride thing, but to fully end your relationship over it. And I actually really liked Carter and Serena, so to see them break up was really sad. 118, we have The Age of Dissonance, which is season 2, episode 18. This is the one with the play where, you know, everyone's dressed up in their costumes and everything like that. The Serena trying to seduce the theatre guy is such a hard watch, firstly because he's old, secondly he turns out to be gay, and then it's just like a whole weird plot line that I feel like just didn't need to happen. It was just very bizarre, but it was kind of fun to see Vanessa and Serena interact because we don't really get that pairing very much. So that was kind of nice.
You know, I don't know why I ever had a crush on you.
Serena, I'm gay.
We also have Dan and Rachel Carr, which again is one of the worst ones. Like, yeah, it's just icky, it's just weird. And I think it didn't really do much for the plot, really. I feel they just kind of needed, I don't know. The whole Rachel Carr thing just doesn't really do much for the plot. And then Serena and Blair fight because they think they're kind of attacking each other on Gossip Girl, when in reality, it's Rachel. She is setting into Gossip Girl all these awful things that Blair has done to try and get back at her and get her, and she does, you know, get her removed from Yale. So, again, I just don't really care for this one. At 117, we have Cedar Anything, and this is season 2, episode 21. And this is where Cyrus is hosting his Jewish holiday, which was cool. It's not something that I'd ever seen really represented in TV before. I know that in Friends, Ross and Monica are supposed to be Jewish, so we have like the Hanukkah episode. But aside from that, not really much. I've not really seen much in the media anyway. So this was really cool to see the dinner and everything like that. But aside from that, it's just a bit Like, Serena comes back from her holiday. She thinks she's married Gabriel, but then she actually hasn't. Dan is becoming a cater waiter to try and pay for Yale, which is something that just pisses me off so, like, to no end, because Rufus refuses to let Lily help him with Dan's tuition money, even though it ultimately means he doesn't go to Yale.
You look familiar. Have you worked for me before?
And also, Blair almost betrays Nate to be a bridesmaid because she just wants to be a bridesmaid, wants to be on all these committees, and the Vanderbilts will only get her into those if she convinces Nate to go to Yale, which he doesn't want to do. So all in all, just meh. 116, we have Touch of Eva, or Ava, and this is season 4, episode 4. And at this point, Chuck and Eva are back in New York, and they're going pretty well, but Blair is hell-bent on destroying them. She won't admit that she just likes Chuck, and he thinks she's doing it for revenge, and it ends in Eva leaving and breaking up with Chuck, which kind of sets off this whole war between Chuck and Blair. This one, I just felt it was so childish from Blair, and the fact that she doesn't actually admit why she did it. I get it, because obviously she had been hurt by Chuck, but then it just made her look really bad, and it starts this whole unnecessary war, which ends up impacting my girl Jenny. So I've got beef there. Also, seeing Dan and Serena kind of reconnect was nice because I do like them together, but the fact that he did it while he was still dating Vanessa and it basically like hits on Serena while he's still with Vanessa is icky.
Ooh, that dress is not fair.
115, I have High Infidelity, and this is the second episode of season 6. And it just kind of upsets me, the season 6 episodes, because despite there only being 10 episodes, so you need to pack in like the drama, you need to get everything going to lead up to the season finale, they feel like filler ones, especially like the first 5 or 6, because nothing is really happening. We have, you know, Blair has just taken on her role at Waldorf Designs, which I do think is really fun, but she's in this war with Poppy and basically tries to sabotage her instead of just proving that her collection is better, which I feel like at that point Blair should have kind of grown out of that by now, and I felt like she really had, so it was just kind of a setback of her character. And also we find out that Stephen actually has a daughter called Sage who is dating Nate, and then Serena and Nate think that Sage and Stephen are seeing each other before they actually just ask and just communicate and find out, oh no, they're actually related. So it's all just a bit ridiculous. And those are the only 2 noteworthy things that happen in this episode. 114, we have The Kids Are Not Alright, and this is season 4, episode 12. So at this point, we're kind of starting to get into the Ben stuff, which, if you watch my videos, you know how I feel about Ben. I can't stand Ben. I think he's so boring. So that is a thing. It's basically Serena's trying to get back at Lily and force her to take accountability, but she just goes about it in such the wrong way by, you know, bringing the affidavit and all this stuff, and Lily's like, don't you realize I could actually go to jail? Like, it doesn't matter, you don't want to press charges, I will go to jail. And then Serena's all like, whoops, and it's just a bit ridiculous. And also in the process of doing that, she and Dan are trying to reconnect, but she keeps blowing him off and making him late for this really important interview in order to push forward this, you know, saving Ben thing. So that creates more of a divide with them and pushes her closer to Ben, which I don't really like. And yeah, I don't know. We also meet the Thorpes in this episode, and I really like Raina, but I don't care for Russell. So again, they're not really giving me anything on that kind of front. And also, again, the captain is not someone that I care about. And a big plot point in this is that Nate thinks that the captain isn't taking his parole seriously, when in actuality he is, and he gets a job with Russell Thorpe. Just kind of looking ahead a bit on the list, the ones we're about to get to, a lot of these ones come from seasons 4, 5, and 6. And I think it's just because in the first 3 seasons, we had consistency. Pretty much every episode was good or at least entertaining. And then when we get to 4, 5, and 6, I feel like we lose that and we get more kind of filler episodes, more down episodes, and some really big episodes. So as we get to the top, you're still going to see 4, 5, and 6, but I think it'll just be because when they do a really good episode in those seasons, they're really good. Whereas I think 1, 2, and 3 are good across the board more consistently. 113, we have Beauty and the Feast, and this is season 5, episode 2. And we're introduced to Beatrice in this episode, I think, or maybe she was introduced the episode before. And she basically uses Blair's bulimia against her, which I really don't like. Blair's pregnant, but Beatrice assumes that her eating disorder has resurfaced and basically tries to taunt her with it, get her to, like, trying to force her to eat and all this stuff, and it's really cruel and I think a really hard watch because they don't actually take it that seriously, and kind of just use it as a bit of a, like, jokey plot point, which is weird. So I don't really like that. And also we have Diana and The Spectator. Again, The Spectator is just not something that I care for at all. I didn't care for it when it was Diana or when it was Nate running it. Across the board, I just don't think it really brought much to the show. So that I don't really enjoy. What I did like was Chuck is kind of going through his thing where he's not really feeling anything and he's trying to induce pain. and Dan is trying to help him with this. And I think this is the episode where he gets him Monkey, his dog, which is really sweet. And Chuck and Dan, I've always thought is a really interesting dynamic. We saw it a little bit in season 1, and then we don't really see it again. It kind of goes away. And then, or is it season 2? It might be season 2 actually. And then to see it resurface here again, they're quite a like comedic duo. They're very opposites, and I like how they interact.
Back again? What don't you get? Unlike Serena, when I rejected you, I meant it.
At 112, we have Despicable B, which is season 5, episode 12. In this episode, we find out that William is Lola's dad, which was a really good reveal. I thought that was really, really well done. At this point, Lily had already started to annoy me, but I did like how she took down Carol, and then Carol gets arrested, and it's a big, big Vanderwoodson drama, which I did enjoy. But also in this episode, Blair gets placed on I can't remember what it's called. It's like the New Yorker, like ups and downs or something. And Dan is placed basically in the good category as an up-and-coming writer and all this stuff, whereas she is placed in the lowbrow, I think it is, or something, category for being married for less time than a Kardashian. Because of this, she starts to feel insecure about herself, and she goes to this event with Dan and just overdresses and just tries to take over his speech, and it is such an uncomfortable watch. It is probably the only time in this show that I actually get secondhand embarrassment and I have to look away. At 111, we have The Princesses and the Frog, which is season 4, episode 20. In this episode, Serena tries to sabotage Blair's happiness, sabotage her relationship with Louis, which was just ridiculous and so spiteful. I talked about this in, I think, both of my Blair and Serena deep dives, that Blair is kind of portrayed to be the antagonist for the first kind of half of the show, probably even earlier than that, maybe just like season 1 and 2, whereas Serena is our protagonist, and they're kind of, butt heads over that. Whereas once Blair comes to the forefront and starts to be the main character more, they needed somebody for her to spar against. And I think that goes against Serena's character because she becomes more bitchy and selfish. And this was a clear example of that. I don't think, cutesy, my favorite Serena, season 1 Serena, Little Sunshine Barbie, would sabotage Blair like this. So it felt kind of unnatural, and I just don't really like it. We also have Charlie, or Ivy, sabotaging Vanessa to make her look bad to Dan, which again was just weird. Like, everyone just had it out for Vanessa. I have a whole video coming on the villainization, if that's even a word, of Vanessa Abrams. Okay, that is coming because they did her dirty. Okay, I know we don't like Vanessa, but they actually did her dirty. So again, that was ridiculous. Didn't really care for that either. And Louis and Blair end up getting engaged in this episode, and then when Blair goes to tell Chuck, he punches the glass, which cuts her face, and is really upset about their engagement. She runs away. This then causes not only a rift between her and Chuck, but also between Nate and Chuck, because then Nate sees this, and I don't know, again, I felt like we were kind of past this now. At this point in the series, I felt like Chuck had grown up a lot from that. So that was a bit of a setback for him, and yeah, it felt like a bit of a shame. But this is kind of when he gets his pain back, I think. It's like when he starts to be able to feel things again. At 110, we have The Townie, which is season 4, episode 11. And in this one, it's kind of just meh. I'll be so real with you. Hardly anything happens. Juliet comes to visit Serena and basically tells her the whole story of Ben, which is that whole kind of revelation. And when she calls Lily out in front of everyone and they all realize that Lily was the one that sent Ben to jail and that she forged Serena's signature on the affidavit, that was crazy. And then also the reveal that she was selling Bass Industries, she was getting it from all angles. So that was really good. But aside from that, I don't even really remember what happens to the rest of the characters in this episode. But that bit is pretty good, but I feel like the rest is kind of meh. And also you get obviously the realization that she sent an innocent man to jail, because up until this point, she truly thought something had happened. And then Serena is like, no, nothing happened. And you see that realization in Lily's face that she fully just sent a man to jail. Absolutely crazy. At 109, we have The Empire Strikes Jack, which is one of my favorite episode titles. I'm doing a video on all of the Gossip Girl episode titles and what movies they're referencing. So look out for that one. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, please. Thank you. Would love to have you here. And this is season 3, episode 16. This episode, I feel like it does have a lot going on. So that fulfills like one half of my sort of brief, but it's stuff that just really is really upsetting. So it's not an episode I really enjoy watching. It does have, you know, a lot of drama and things, but it's not one that I get excited when I know that it's coming up sort of thing, because it's the one where Agnes drugs Jenny and basically sends her to be assaulted, which is so scary and so twisted, and genuinely I think probably the worst thing that happens in this show. It is just awful. And then Nate goes and saves her, and also in this episode we have that Chuck hands his hotel over to Elizabeth to kind of help him in this scandal that he's having, and then Jack is actually working with Elizabeth and steals the hotel from Chuck. So all around, we've just, it's going down for everybody. Everything is bad on all fronts.
Did you send security to kick me out?
And also Vanessa is convinced that she and Dan are in a bit of a rut, which is just whatever, and she makes him this themed dinner, and it's a whole thing that's kind of boring. Serena and Nate are together at this time, which is nice because you get a bit of that, but we don't really get to see them together too much. At 108, we have It's a Dad world, I think. I think I've got enough dads in there. And this is season 3, episode 20. And this is kind of in the heat of all of the William drama. We also have Serena versus Jenny, because Jenny has kind of tried to sabotage Serena's relationship with Nate. And there's this kind of feud going on between the Humphreys and the Vanderwoodsons because of William and Rufus. And it's a lot. There's a lot going on. And I think, again, I don't know, I mean, you can watch my Jenny Humphrey Deserves a Better video to know where I stand, but I just feel like everyone's so harsh to Jenny. She's literally just a teenager, but whatever. And we also have Dan being insecure about Vanessa, because Vanessa wins this essay contest, or she gets a place at like the Tisch school or something, I can't remember. But Dan basically applied for it as well, and has these whole rules about, oh, we won't talk about school stuff and we won't talk about jobs because, you know, I'm going to get jealous of you and you're going to, and it's dumb. It's just dumb. And I don't care for it. Like, grow up, Humphrey. At 107, we have Panic Roommate, and this is season 4, episode 13. In this one, Blair wants a good review from her supervisor, Eppley, and thinks that basically getting her laid is the only way that she's going to get that. So she tries to set her up with Nate, and then she ends up finding some British boyfriend and ends up quitting and giving Blair her job. We do get some funny moments from Blair in this one. It's a bit more of a light-hearted episode, which is nice. And we see, you know, a bit of banter between her and Blair and Nate, and then Blair and Eppley and Chuck, and it's just like, I don't know, it's kind of a filler episode, but it's a bit of a fun one.
You need to sleep with her right away.
What?
You better not be selfish, Archibald. You know what I mean? A woman remembers.
And also in this episode, we see Ben, which, you know how I feel about Ben, so... But this is probably the most interesting that Ben gets, in my opinion, and it's when he has kind of like beef with Damien Dalgard, and they kind of like butting heads. I feel like that's probably the most interesting Ben was, so congrats for that, I guess. At 106, we have a Petty in Pink, and this is season 4, episode 19, where they have like the pink party and everyone's all dressed in pink, which is super cute. I don't know. We have in this episode... Blair is dating Louis in secret because his family aren't supposed to know, but then Serena thinks that she's dating Dan, and it gets put on Gossip Girl and them kissing, and it's a whole thing. But they tried to prove to Serena that it's not true when they obviously do have feelings for each other. Well, at least Dan did for Blair at this point. So that's just a bit of a meh. Like, it's again, like, it's just all based in confusion. Those are the storylines that I just don't really care for, is when it's all based in miscommunication, because Blair insists they can't tell Serena about it, even though Dan thinks that they should. And if they had just told her, none of this would have happened. So there's that. There's also Lily on house arrest, and we're supposed to like feel bad for her or something. And I think it's like Anne Archibald and some of her other friends are like talking bad about her and all this stuff, and Rufus manages, I think, to get her like early release from house arrest or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is, but like they kind of frame it like we should feel bad for her, and I just don't feel bad for her because she's a rich white lady that literally sent an innocent man to jail. Sent him to jail, which not only gave him like a criminal record, but also would put him on the sex offenders list because she sent him to jail for statutory rape of a minor. I guess that is just statutory rape, actually. You know what I'm saying? So, literally forged her daughter's like signature, all this crazy shit. He was in jail for, oh gosh, if season 3 is like 3 years from the pilot, and then Serena was knew Ben during boarding school. He's been in prison for about 3 years, maybe even 4. And she's just got house arrest. She didn't get jail time. She literally just got house arrest. And yet you still want us to feel bad for her, even though she got such a low sentence and everything? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I get why they did it, because obviously they couldn't have one of their main characters in jail, so putting her on house arrest, whatever, but you will not have me feeling bad for that lady. So at 105, we have The Fasting and the Furious, and that is season 5, episode 5. Probably the most notable thing that happens in this episode is that Louise' family have rules for Blair's baby. And they have these strict things. They want her to live in Monaco. They want her to send the baby to a school in Switzerland, I think. They have this whole rule that she can't come back to New York for more than 48 hours. And if she does, she will lose custody of her baby. That was crazy. Like, that was like the Grimaldis versus the Waldorfs was good. It was good. And we had Cyrus, which I love. Always love to see Cyrus. And we actually get a really sweet moment between Blair and Eleanor in this episode, where after this whole thing, with the family happens, Eleanor says she feels like she's responsible because she was bragging about Blair and how she's always going to do what she wants to do. And she says that Blair's going to make a really good mum. And it was just a really sweet moment between the two of them. We don't get so many of those, so I feel like when we do get them, they're really impactful. At 104, we have Crossroads, which is the 16th episode of season 5. And in this one, the reason that it's a bit lower down is because I only really appreciate half of the story and not the other half of what we've got going on here. So the first half is that Blair is trying to prove to Serena that she doesn't like Dan. She's trying to prove they're just friends, there's nothing more, but they end up kissing at the inside play, and Serena sees, and obviously it's undeniable, and she ultimately kind of gives them permission to date, even though you can tell that it does really hurt her. Which I don't like. I've said numerous times, I don't care for Dan and Blair as a couple, as friends. I adored them, and I think they're one of, if not the best friendship on this show. But ultimately, them as a couple, I don't really care for those storylines, so that's where they start to lose me. Also, we have Chuck sabotaging Dan by just dating Alessandra, I think it is her name, and he, sabotages Dan's next book.
They must have really loved Dan's proposal to call back this quickly. You read it. Didn't you love it? I mean, unexpected, but it plagiarized.
You look like you have your hands full. I'll just leave you with this.
That is a bit funny. We have some comedic moments out of that. Then we also have that Cece dies in this episode, R.I.P. She did some real scheming while she was alive. And yeah, so she ends up dying in this episode, which is really sad. And obviously all the Vanderwoodstons are there. But when they're all there is when the whole of the family finds out that Charlie is actually an imposter and that she is Ivy, who Carol hired to play her daughter. So that is a really good reveal, and I think that part of this episode is really good. But the whole Blair and Dan thing I don't really care for. What I will say is that when Blair realizes that Dan loves her is a really sweet moment. I will give the Dare shippers that, because they're obviously going through the book, and she didn't actually read the book. She just kind of skimmed over it, but she sees that in it, Dan went to this play reading or this poetry reading that she did when no one else went. And she kind of sees that Dan actually does love her for her and her other interests and all that kind of stuff, which I do think was a nice moment. At 103, we have It Girl Happened One Night, and this is season 4, episode 15. This one is Valentine's, which I love. I always love a Valentine's themed episode or just a holiday episode in general. And in this one, we have a bit of a ridiculous fight between Blair and Serena because Serena's basically trying to protect Blair's feelings, but she gets defensive about it and Blair and her fight. But when Blair actually realizes that Chuck really does like Raina and it's not just a game and he's not just playing her, is really sad. We do also get one of my favorite moments in the show in this episode, which is when Dan and Blair are sitting on the phone and they watch Rosemary's Baby at the same time. I really love that scene. At 102, we have Dirty Rotten Scandals, which is season 6, episode 3. And in this one, Blair's trying to do her first Waldorf Designs fashion show and she gets really ill and Chuck ends up, doing everything for her and making it perfect, which was sweet, the moments we get between them two. But then, Serena and Blair are fighting and just bickering and the whole thing is ridiculous and Sage ends up ruining Blair's fashion show and then Serena is mad at Blair, even though it's all Sage's fault and it's all just a bit ridiculous. But I love a fashion show. I feel like that's so Gossip Girl, so it earns points for that. At 101, we have Dr. Estranged Love, and that is season 3, episode 19. In this one, we have William shows up, and it's him and all his antics, because of course it is. So that I don't really care for, because I don't really care for William, and it just creates this whole rift between Lily and Rufus, which, as you know, we love Lily and Rufus, so not having that. We also have Jenny trying to break up Serena and Nate in this episode, which obviously goes very poorly for her and creates even more of a rift with her and the Upper East Siders. Then Chuck puts a dating ban on Blair so that she can't, find a new boyfriend because they've just broken up, which is a bit ridiculous, but also it gives us a really good Blair character development moment when she has the opportunity to kiss this guy. Oh my god, what was his name? Cameron. She has the opportunity to kiss him to make Chuck jealous, but she decides not to, and she says that when she does kiss someone for the first time, it's going to be because she wants to kiss them and not as part of this, war that they have going on, which I did really love. And also alongside that, she's dressed like Vanessa because she wears Vanessa's clothes. It's his party in Brooklyn, which was funny. And Dan actually goes to this party as well because he has kind of messed up this whole Tish thing. So if you remember what I said, Dan was jealous of Vanessa because she got into the Tish writing program. This girl that kind of loves Dan, is obsessed with him. I can't remember her name now. I think it begins with a V. Anyway, he tells her about this and that it basically, Vanessa based her film script on Dan's story. So then she was like, it's plagiarism. And she tells her dad and gets Vanessa removed from the Tish writing program and Dan put there instead. So then he's running around and trying to fix it. But I think it's like Willa, actually. I think her name's Willa. Which, again, is just a ridiculous storyline. This whole Dan being jealous of Vanessa thing, she's your girlfriend, just be happy for her. But then, it does get out of hand, which isn't his fault, but also, why are you running your mouth? Why are you talking to this other girl about your issues with your girlfriend? At number 100, we have It Girl Interrupted, which is season 5, episode 19. And in this episode, Serena is trying to make Lola into the new It Girl because she is Gossip Girl at this point, and by making Lola the new It Girl, she thinks it'll take kind of the heat off of her, but by the end she realizes that she actually kind of does like being the It Girl. And we also have Nate trying to trick Diana, which completely backfires on him, which is kind of hilarious. And even though Diana's evil, low-key, she's kind of an icon sometimes. And then lastly, we have that Chuck pays Blair's dowry in this episode, so she is able to get her divorce from Louis. And I think the reveal of that, she's very mean to him about it, which is kind of crazy because the level of money we are talking about here is absolutely insane that he paid for her to be free. And then all he gets is a thank you text, which is fine because they're not dating and he didn't do it to be with her. But I just think a little more, she could have been a little bit nicer to him about it. And then they just literally never talk about it ever again, that he paid that. But I guess I feel like that was kind of a way for him to redeem himself from the hotel stuff. So there is that side of it. And then Dan gives Blair the chance to be a princess for a final time by taking her to the Met steps in the pink dress, which is a really sweet scene. But he's so insanely jealous and annoying throughout the rest of the episode that I feel like it's kind of ruined. Like, it's a nice moment on its own, but this episode just doesn't really do it for me so much. I feel like parts of it are really good, and then other parts I can do without. At 99, we have Dan DeFloret, I think is how it's said. I'm not entirely sure. But this is season 3, episode 4. And this is the episode where we meet Olivia Burke. And I do actually quite like Olivia's character. I think she's quite sweet, so that's a pretty fun episode. Nate and Dan are also proper buddies by this point, and I've always loved their friendship because they have like really funny moments together. I feel like they're quite a comedic duo, which is fun. And we also have Blair wanting to basically go back to Constance because NYU it's not got that same kind of mentality, so she misses being the queen bee. So that's a bit embarrassing, and Chuck and Jenny work together to basically remind her of who she is and that she needs to come away from the high school life. And Jenny looks so good in this episode. Her outfits are insane, and I mean, I love Jenny. I think she's great, and I think it's sweet that Chuck gets that photographer to take, the paparazzi to take pictures of Blair and stuff. And I liked that kind of her realizing she has to let go of high school and find out who she is at NYU.
I can't believe you didn't get that girl's number.
How long is Bree in Texas? Because maybe she should help you out with your English paper.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just expect more game from the guy who dated Serena Vanderwoodson.
At 98, we have The Freshman, which is season 3, episode 2. So everyone's just kind of starting off their uni college journeys, and Georgina's being iconic because of course she is. She's being iconic as she always is, and trying to, worm her way in. She's Blair's roommate. Like, it's a whole lot of ridiculousness ensues, which is really fun. But we have Chuck feuding with Serena in this episode, which is so dumb. He lets her stay with him, but then she ends up accidentally sabotaging his business deal. And then when he tells Rufus about it out of concern, she then purposefully sabotages one of his business deals. So it's just an annoying feud. But we do get Carter and Serena getting together in this episode, which is fun because I do enjoy their dynamic together. And we also have Bree and Nate, that whole plot line, which I just find a bit dull. I didn't care for them together, so yeah. I didn't care for The Godfather. Okay, I'm sorry. I literally started filming this video 2 months ago now. So, hi. This is why I look different. And to be honest with you, I'll probably look different by the end of this video as well, because this is a long ass video. But if you're enjoying it, please like and comment and subscribe. At 97, we have Goodbye Columbia, which is the 5th episode of season 4. And this is the episode where Juliet is kind of starting to put her plan against Serena into motion properly. And so she spreads the rumor that she has an STD, and that was absolutely wild. And it was so insane the way that it all kind of, the chain reaction of it, because Nate had asked Dan to go with him, but Dan had already promised Vanessa that he hadn't slept with Serena, so he didn't need to get tested, right? So then when Dan goes to check Nate in, then that gets posted to Gossip Girl, which then makes Vanessa really jealous. And then Juliet is able to use that to kind of convince her to steal Serena's phone. And it was just very evil genius. And it was, I mean, I'm not Juliet's biggest fan by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a little bit of a slay. So that was a really good part of this episode. And then we have Chuck and Blair are at war. And he's kind of trying to basically ruin her life any chance that he gets. And then by the end, Juliet completely throws Vanessa under the bus for stealing Serena's phone. And this is kind of the start. Well, I feel like it happened a little bit before this, but this is like the real start of the downfall of Vanessa Abrams. So yeah, I feel like it's not a bad episode. It's got good moments, but it is a little bit more of a filler kind of episode. At 96, we have While You Weren't Sleeping, and this is the 16th episode of season 4, and this is Eric's 18th birthday, and we have Damien blackmailing him to basically do this drug deal, or at least to pay the money for it. And it's all very chaotic. Blair's trying to handle her new job, her new position at W, and Dan is quite sweet and offers to help her. And it's all very chaotic. Everyone's kind of running around trying to help Eric, trying to help Blair. So it is a good episode. It is an episode that I enjoy, but in terms of plot points, it is a little bit of a filler episode again. At 95, we have The Jewel of Denial, and this is season 5, episode 3. And in this episode, Serena brings Charlie back to New York after she finds her in LA. We also have Blair not wanting to know who the father of her child is, which creates absolute hilarity between her and Dan and Dorota, which is really good to watch. And then we also have that in this episode, Dan gives Chuck his dog Monkey, which is really sweet. And I actually quite like the friendship pairing of Dan and Chuck. And I think they have some really sweet moments. And that is definitely one of the big ones for me. So I feel like this is just a nice episode.
Suffer through mediocre sex with an editor's assistant to find out who's publishing your book, and this is how you thank me.
At 94, we have Roads to Perdition, and this is season 5, episode 9. And in this episode, Blair basically follows Chuck around. She follows him to therapy and wants to figure out how he became a good person so that she can turn Louis back into a good person again. And I thought this episode, it is good, but it's also kind of harsh again, because Blair, for a good amount of season 5, is just constantly trying to turn Chuck back and kind of put his character development back. But we do get a really sweet moment with them when she feels like she is the darkness because she pulled Chuck into it, and now that they've broken up, he has now become a better person. And now that she's with Louis, he was a good person, but now he's becoming more like Chuck was. And we have this really sweet speech where Chuck tells Blair that she was the lightest thing in his life and that he wasn't bad because of her. I don't really remember much else about this episode, but I think it's also the episode where Dan and Alessandra are like Twitter beefing by accident. Like there's like Dan Humphrey fan and Dan Humphrey hater, and they're kind of trying to like beef to get the sales of his book up or something. And apparently Katy Perry retweeted them or something ridiculous like that. So yeah, a little bit more of a forgettable episode, but I really do like that scene with Chuck and Blair.
Sex tapes and public brawls make people famous.
I'm not Snooki. I'm a writer.
At 93, we have Valley Girls, which is season 2, episode 24. And it kind of pained me to put this lower down on the list because there are parts of this episode that I really, really love, but I just don't really care for the flashbacks. And it's a shame because I really love Brittany Snow and I really love Kristen Ritter, and I absolutely adore her. But I just don't vibe with them in this episode. The Lily flashbacks, like, it was supposed to be a backdoor pilot, which means that this was going to kind of act as the pilot or the kind of starting point for a series that they were going to do, a prequel series to Gossip Girl, which was going to be called Valley Girls, and it was going to be about Lily and Carol. Just don't really care for the flashback part of this episode, and it takes up like a good chunk of it. And it also doesn't, it teaches you a little bit about Lily and why she is the way that she is. But in terms of the other characters, there's no push forward in their stories. So you can kind of skip through the flashback parts of this episode. But the prom parts I absolutely love. So that does bring it back up for me. And obviously when there's kind of that iconic scene where Chuck reveals that he voted for Blair like over 100 times to be prom queen, and he has kind of orchestrated this whole thing so that she can have the prom that she dreamed of when she was younger, which is really sweet. We also get some sweet Dan and Serena moments, and then Blair and Serena when they sit on the steps together, and she kind of is talking about how Nate's just her high school boyfriend and he's not really supposed to be her forever boyfriend. I just thought that it was a really, really nice episode in the parts that I do like of it. And now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, maybe I should have put this higher on the list. Maybe I was a bit harsh, but I can't change it now.
Hey, soldier, how's that front? Well, I'm glad you let me bail you out.
At 92, we have Never Been Marcus, and this is season 2, episode 2. It's kind of, you know, there's a big focus on Blair and Marcus, which is kind of boring, and I don't really care for that. And we have Dan and Serena deciding to kind of keep their relationship a secret, and the iconic scene when they're on the bus together, I also really like. So, and I like the summer vibes as well of the early episodes of this season, so that is also fun. But yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I probably would have swapped Valley Girls in this one. At 91, we have 17 Candles, and this is season 1, episode 8, and it is Blair's 17th birthday. So we have her birthday party, we have Dan trying to get Serena and Vanessa to bond, and they play Rock Band together, or Guitar Hero, or something like that. Which is cute, and Serena's just her cute bubbly self because we're back in season 1 where I love her the most. And we also get the moment where Chuck confesses that he kind of has feelings for Blair, or like has a crush on her or something, and I really love that scene.
Hey Blair. Hi. Hello there. Happy birthday to me.
She's kind of still hoping that she can mend things with Nate. I also really love her dress in this episode as well, but Nate doesn't end up showing up, and he ends up talking to Jenny, and that's kind of the first time we see those two interact, I think, which is quite sweet. So yeah, I feel like this is a really iconic episode, and also Nate's father is being charged with his fraud and everything as well. I feel like it's hard to get a bad episode in season 1. A lot of them are really, really good. Number 90, we have The Last Days of Disco Stick. Yep, it's that episode. It's season 3, episode 10, the Lady Gaga episode. And Olivia breaks up with Dan in this episode because she realizes that he loves Vanessa. And then we also have Lady Gaga performing at the end of this episode. Just the whole ridiculousness of the play with Dan, Vanessa, Olivia, and Blair, where it's all based on Lady Gaga songs, which is just utter ridiculousness, but honestly, for the crack, it's kind of a fun episode.
Let's have some fun. This beat is sick.
I want to take a ride on your disco stick.
One thing I do really love is Nate's speech about loving Serena, which is really sweet. And he says, you know, that he had always loved her, and I think he says she's the most alive person he's ever met, which I thought was a really, really sweet scene. I really love that scene. And I think this is also the episode where we meet Damien for the first time, Damien Dalgard, and he's a pretty good villain character, so I feel like that is fun as well, and we see him and Jenny interact. So yeah, overall, some real weird parts, but also some pretty good parts. At 89, we have Empire of the Sun, and this is season 4, episode 17. And in this episode, Nate and Raina become a couple, and I really liked them as a couple. I thought they were really, really sweet, and that, I think, was a missed opportunity, definitely. And then we also have Dan and Blair, who are in their kind of throes of their friendship, so they decide to have a test kiss to see if there is anything more there. And that is one of the most dramatic endings to an episode ever. Like, the rest of the episode is a little bit forgettable, but for that moment at the end, it had to go higher up on the list. At 88, we have Desperately Seeking Serena, which is season 1, episode 15. And this is when Georgina is here. She has arrived, and she is iconic as ever. And after being drugged by Georgina, Serena ends up missing the SATs and has to lie to Dan about it. And that's kind of when unfortunately, their relationship kind of starts to unravel a little bit. And we also have Nate and Vanessa kind of spark a little connection in this episode, which is really sweet. I really liked them in season 1. I thought they were actually a really sweet couple. Jenny also meets Asha in this episode. and Blair tries to sabotage Nellie Yuki's SAT chances because she also wants to go to Yale.
May I be excused?
No, you may not.
At 87, we have A Lady Vanished, and this is season 3, episode 14. And in this one, Serena is kind of trying to mend the relationship between Chuck and his mum and kind of speaks to her, which Blair doesn't like, and that kind of steps on Chuck's toes a little bit. And ultimately, she doesn't do it for him. She does it because she's struggling with her relationship with her own dad.
Going over there.
Serena, sit your ass down.
We do get some fun moments, though, between Chuck and Blair and Nate and Serena, which I always love to see, the Non-Judgmental Breakfast Club. Lily and Rufus are also worried about Jenny and Damien being together because he's a little bit sketch. So Jenny's like kind of in the throes of her drug dealing phase here. And this is also the episode where Vanessa and Dan get together, which I do really like because initially when they did first get together, I liked their chemistry a lot. And I actually really enjoyed them as a couple initially. At 86, we have It's a Wonderful Lie, and this is the 12th episode of season 2. And we've got a lot going on in this episode. So this is the one with the snowflake ball. Jenny gives Vanessa the see-through dress. She gives her the see-through dress because Vanessa sabotaged Jenny's chances with Nate, which honestly, I feel that queen because oh my gosh, when she steals that letter, outrage, absolute outrage. Yeah, the fact that he ends up choosing Vanessa in the end still irks me to this day. Still to this day. Aaron Rose is also in this episode, which gives it minus points, but everyone looks really nice at the snowflake ball. And then this is also the episode where Bart dies. So that was crazy drama at the time. And I think this was the mid-season finale for season 2. At 85, we have The Grandfather Part 2, which is the 3rd season, episode 8. And this is the episode with Tripp's election scandal, which is a really wild episode. So we have he jumps into the lake to save the guy that's drowning, but then it turns out that it was all orchestrated and Vanessa catches it on film and everything like that. We also have the ridiculous storyline where Olivia has said something stupid on Jimmy Fallon about Dan. She's trying to make sure that he doesn't see it, and that whole thing's a bit ridiculous. And then Serena and Blair are arguing, and she ends up pushing Blair's face into a cake.
You look hot.
Same.
At 84, we have Chuck in Real Life, which is season 2, episode 7. And in this episode, we have Serena rebelling against Bart's house rules, which is a really fun plot line. And then we also have Dan and Jenny taking Nate in to their home when he is basically left homeless because they've kind of seized his house. And I really loved when Nate was kind of with the Humphreys. I thought that was really sweet, and I really enjoyed those plot lines.
I have guy friends.
Of course he does. I miss.
No, not including you.
For Cedric?
Not including dolls.
Nate. Hey, man. Hey, it's Humphrey. Dan. Sweet, bro. All right. Love it. Bye.
Cedric invited.
Jenny, come on. You know Cedric would get dirty.
At 83, we have You've Got Yale, which is season 2, episode 16. And in this episode, Blair goes after Rachel Carr, who has given her a B, I think it was, when she needs an A, because obviously she's trying to get into Yale. So she kind of tries to haze her by inviting her to the opera and not showing up. And then everyone else is also at the opera, so we have a bit of awkwardness between Lily, Rufus, and Dan and Serena, because they're trying to date again. And Vanessa and Nate have a sweet moment where she got them tickets, but they end up being like kind of up in the nosebleeds a little bit. But it's sweet because, you know, obviously Nate is able to just get tickets if he wants to, but she, you know, still decides to get them on her own, even though he can just get them. At 82, we have Gone with the Will, which is season 2, episode 15. And in this episode, Bart's will gets read and we meet Jack for the first time, I think, or maybe this is his second episode. And we see that Bart actually leaves Chuck everything.
Your dad wrote you a letter?
Aren't you curious to know what it
I
says?
think I can guess. You're a disappointment of a son. I'd die of embarrassment if I wasn't already. Why do you wear so much purple?
So that is a really big plot point in the show, and a really good episode. I do really like this one. And with that, we also have everyone finding out about Lily and Rufus's baby, which is just absolutely crazy. That is such good TV. At 81, we have Carnal Knowledge, which is season 2, episode 17. And in this episode, Blair makes up a rumor that Dan is sleeping with Rachel Carr, the teacher. And then him and Serena end up breaking up, and he promises that it isn't true. But then as soon as him and Serena break up, he goes and sleeps with Rachel Carr, which is absolute madness. What the hell was going on there? So that is a crazy storyline. And then we also have Chuck and Elle, you know, that whole storyline where he like tries to save her or whatever, but then she turns out to be like double crossing him anyway. I really don't care for that storyline. I find it very, very boring. At number 80, we have Rufus getting married, and this is season 3, episode 5. So we have Lily and Rufus's wedding in this episode, which is really sweet, and they all are at the loft, which I really love. And we also have the drama of finding out that Scott is actually their son, which is such a crazy, crazy moment. And we also have Carter and Serena, and he tells her the truth about being engaged to one of the Buckleys and why they basically want him dead. And so he has to leave, which was such a shame because I really loved Carter and Serena together. So yeah, overall, I feel like this is a really solid episode. At 79, we have The Undergraduates, which is season 4, episode 3. And in this episode, it's kind of the first day at Columbia, which is really fun. I really liked when we did get to see, even though we didn't really see a lot of it, Blair and Serena at college attending Columbia. And Blair and Serena also outsmart Juliet when she tries to pit them against each other, which is always a really iconic scene when they live stream their fight on Gossip Girl, and Serena and Blair exposed that Juliet was actually trying to break up their friendship. And also in this episode, we have Dan finding out through blood types that Milo isn't his, which is always a really sad moment as well. At 78, we have The Kids Stay in the Picture, which is season 4, episode 18. And this is the one with the modern royalty photo shoot, which breaks my heart when Chuck has to stand by himself because obviously both of his parents are dead, and he's an only child, which just like breaks my little heart. But we also have in this episode, we meet Charlie for the first time. Well, obviously we know her as Ivy, but there's that whole storyline kind of going on. I'm not huge about the Rhodes storylines, to be honest with you. They're not my favorite, but I do still feel like this episode has a lot of good points in it. And then at the very end, Louis shows up with Blair's high heel, kind of like a Cinderella moment, which is really sweet. At 77, we have It's Really Complicated, which is season 6, episode 8, and this is the final Thanksgiving episode. And in this, we have Chuck and Blair trying to expose that Bart is evil, and Lily actually starts to come around to it and realize what Bart is doing. We also have that Sage and Nate get back together. Serena and Dan are together, which is really sweet until he posts his mean Serena chapter and she breaks up with him. Nate punches Dan. There's all kinds of chaotic moments in this episode. There's some really funny moments in this episode and lots of callbacks to earlier seasons, specifically earlier Thanksgiving episodes, which I do like. And it's actually the only Thanksgiving episode to include Georgina as well, which is fun.
What the hell took you so long?
And good morning to you too, Blair. Chuck didn't even care when I told him that Bruce Kaplan mysteriously drowned.
His dentist?
Oh, that's Brad Kaplan.
At 76, we have The Grandfather, which is season 2, episode 19. And for this one, we have Blair being rebellious. She starts seeing Carter, and all of this kind of stems from the fact that she realizes that she won't be able to go to Yale, so she doesn't really know where things are going. And I actually kind of liked the pairing of her and Carter. That was fun.
What's this? Good cop? Bass cop?
Nate also reconciles with the Vanderbilts, that kind of his mum's side of the family in this episode, which is nice for him, but it also kind of jeopardizes his relationship with Vanessa. At 75, we have the Magnificent Archibalds, and this is season 2, episode 11, and it is our second Thanksgiving episode. I love a Thanksgiving episode. I actually have a video on my channel ranking all of the Thanksgiving episodes if you want to go and watch that. In this one, Nate's dad literally tries to hold him for ransom, which is just absolute madness.
You really planning on holding me and Mom for ransom?
Because of that and everything that's kind of going down, him and Vanessa start to reconnect a little bit as well. And because of that, when Jenny returns home after having run away to do her fashion, when she comes back, there is a love letter from Nate, but Vanessa steals it and she takes it so that Jenny can't see it, so that she can be with Nate, which I always thought was like, you bet. Like, my girl Jenny deserved to see that letter. She deserved to see that letter. And we also have that Bart Bass's files on all of the Vanderwoodsons get exposed, and Lily finds them in the safe, which is absolutely wild, full-on dossiers for all of them. And we have a sweet moment where they go back to the diner where they went in the first Thanksgiving episode as well. At 74, we have The Remains of Jay, which is the 20th episode of season 2. And for this one, Blair and Nate are kind of rekindling their romance, so they end up getting back together. Because of this, we also have Vanessa and Chuck hooking up, because originally they were just pretending to date to make them jealous, but then they do actually end up sleeping together at the end of this episode. And running alongside this, we have Serena throwing Jenny a 16th birthday party that she really doesn't want, which always infuriates me. Like, they kind of make Jenny out to be the bad guy in this episode, when Serena was the one that forced this party on Jenny because she wanted to prove to Poppy Lifton that she was cool and she could still throw cool parties, and Jenny did not want it. But it still reflects badly on her, because everything always does. Jenny Humphrey deserved better, okay? I will say it till my dying breath.
All I did was carry the chili and prevent teenagers from having unprotected sex.
At 73, we have Con Air, which is the 19th episode of season 5. And in this episode, we have Serena becoming Gossip Girl. So she is gifted Gossip Girl by Georgina. And I really loved Serena as Gossip Girl. I think those episodes are really fun. And that was a fun plot point for her. So I actually do really enjoy those episodes. Dan and Blair also have sex for the first time, which is really awkward, which kind of leads to funny moments between the two of them. And also them confiding in, Dan confides in Nate and Blair confides in Dorota, which is kind of fun. And then Lily tries to trick Ivy into basically doing something illegal so that she can steal Cece's money back from her, but it backfires, which I really hate that whole storyline with Lily and William and Ivy and the money, and it's just not for me. And also Chuck realizes that Jack couldn't have been the one to give him the blood donation because he went to a British boarding school or something. So he's not eligible to give blood, which then kind of opens up that question of, okay, who did give Chuck blood after the car crash if it wasn't Jack?
Don't touch me. No, I can't give that kid my blood, so go away.
Tell your agent the check's in the mail.
You played me with a fake kid?
The kid's real, he's just not sick.
At 72, we have I Am Number 9, which is the 6th episode of season 5. It has one of my favourite scenes in it where Chuck goes to Blair and apologises for everything that he has done, which is a really, really sweet moment, and I really love that moment between the two of them. And in Chuck's kind of character development, I think it's a very pivotal moment. Also, that Jane wants the movie rights to Inside, so Serena is kind of trying to get them from Dan, but she's still mad at him for even writing the book in the first place. So that's kind of the conflict of this episode. And Blair is hosting her bridesmaids contest, basically, to find her bridesmaids, and Ivy ends up winning. At 71, we have Poison Ivy, which is season 1, episode 3. And this is when everyone's kind of getting ready to meet the college representatives, and that part I just don't really care for so much, but this episode does have some really good moments in it, particularly when Blair reads her letter to Serena that she wrote but never sent while she was at boarding school, and the two of them kind of come to a truce. That moment I absolutely adore. It's one of my favorites in the series. But aside from that, I feel like I just don't really care for the rest of this episode. I do like that it's the start of Jenny and Eric's friendship, which is sweet. But yeah, kind of aside from that, and obviously the big iconic moment at the end, I'm not so fussed about the college stuff. At 70, we have Southern Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and this is season 2, episode 22, where they find out that Gabriel is a con artist. So they're trying to prove it, and you know that him and Poppy are kind of conning Lily and her friends out of their money. So Chuck goes and he brings Georgina back from her Christian camp. So good. I absolutely adore Georgina. At number 69, we have Portrait of Lady Alexander, and this is the 4th episode of season 6. And we get Blair and Chuck kind of scheming together, which is always fun, and they're trying to figure out who Lady Alexander is, visiting the horse show to figure out, you know, who she is and speak to the daughter of one of Bart's old business partners, while also kind of trying to keep Lily at bay and not realize like what they're trying to do. So that's a really fun part of this episode. And then also it is revealed that Lily had slept with Stephen, which is just a huge drama. And Charlie, well, Ivy, is trying to out Lily's secrets on Gossip Girl, and there's Sage and Nate, but then there's also Stephen and Serena, and then Lily ended up sleeping with Stephen like ages ago, and it's just a whole mess. But it's a good episode. At 68, we have a Reversals of Fortune, which is the first episode of season 3, and we get some really cute Chuck and Blair moments in this episode, which I really love. And then we also have Serena and Carter, which again I really love, and her riding the horse is beyond iconic. We have Dan and Eric and Jenny, I think, in the Hamptons. And yeah, like I said, I love the summer episodes. I really love the fall episodes. Obviously, I feel like that's just so classic Gossip Girl, is the fall episodes, but I also really love the summer ones. At 67, we have Easy J, which is season 4, episode 6. And this is when Jenny returns, and watching her be collateral damage in Chuck and Blair's war is absolutely horrendous, but at least she kind of gets to have her moment at the end where she gets to be the bigger person. She gets a nice send-off with Dan, and I kind of wish this was the last time that we had seen Jenny, because when they bring her back, I think they just ruin her character even more. But I loved her in this episode. The outfits that she wears, she shows up and she shows out. I love this woman. And then Serena is also dating Colin in this episode, and Chuck and Blair decide to kind of make a truce in their war. And yeah, good episode. Very good episode. Okay guys, this is now the 3rd scenery change I think that we've had, but it's okay. We're just gonna roll with it. So we're gonna keep going. So at 66, I have the 16-Year-Old Virgin, and that is season 3, episode 15. And this is the episode where Jenny wants to lose her virginity to Damien Dalgard, and basically everyone is trying to stop her from doing that. Serena and Nate fight about this because they don't agree on how the situation should be handled, and also Chuck gets cancelled for sexual harassment from waitresses, I think it was, that worked in the Palace Hotel when he was younger. So I think it's supposed to be from around like when we first met him in the pilot. At 65, I have Yes Then Zero, and this is the first episode of season 5. And I liked the dynamic between Chuck, Nate, and Serena in this episode because it's kind of when they're in California together. And we also find out that it is Blair who is pregnant. Which is some quite, sweet and funny scenes between her and Dorota, because Dorota's the first person to find out about this. We also have that Diana is first introduced to us in this episode, and I honestly feel like she is one of the better villains on the show, so I quite enjoy her character. Like, she's obviously heinous, but she kind of eats with it. At 64, I have The Princess Dowry, which is season 5, episode 17. And the reason that this one is so high, I feel like it's like kind of a filler episode because Blair thinks she might have found a loophole with her dowry, but it doesn't actually end up working. But one of the reasons I love this episode is because of Cece's funeral. Like, I just feel like that whole scene is just so funny and also really sweet that we, it's kind of one of the last times that we get to see Lily and Rufus being really sweet together. And we also get the reveal that Cece had left all of her money, I think it is, to Ivy. She didn't leave it to Charlie, she left it to Ivy. So then we also get the reveal that she knew that Ivy was an imposter as well.
It was all here when I got home.
There's whiskey and stew and mother.
You so desperately need.
At 63, I have The Fugitives, which is season 5, episode 23. And in this episode, we have Blair and Chuck scheming together again, which I always enjoy the kind of banter between those two. And because she is doing this, Blair has to send Serena in her place for the interview with Dan to go to Rome. So that is also kind of a funny dynamic, seeing Dan and Serena together and her dressed as Blair and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, another kind of filler episode, but also just a kind of more light-hearted, fun one. At 62, I have School Ties, which is the 12th episode of season 1. And I don't know why this one is 62 because I actually really love this episode. It's one of my favourites, so I don't know why it's so far down. Maybe just because, I don't know. Maybe just because it's like, there's not a lot of plot in it. There's not a lot that pushes the story forward in this one, but it's still really fun. So I feel like I'm kind of scolding my past self who made this list because this episode slaps. But this is the episode where they have the pool party at school, and when they are caught, all of them kind of band together and insist that they don't know anything and are happy to lie for each other, whereas Dan isn't, because he is the one that's there kind of, I don't know if he's there on a scholarship or like I don't really know, but he's like, if I get kicked out of school, it is going to be bad for me. Like, I'm not like you guys, I don't get to just, make a donation and get back in. So we see that kind of tension between Dan and Serena in this episode. We also find out that Lily said yes to Bart's proposal. And I think this is the episode where Vanessa finds out that Chuck and Blair had slept together as well, because she's like filming her little documentary. At 61, I have How to Succeed in Bassness, and this is season 3, episode 7, I think. Yeah, episode 7. And this is with Chuck's bar opening, I think it is, in the hotel, and it's 20s themed, so everyone's dressed up, which is really fun. I love the fashion in this episode. We also get Lily and Rufus being really cute because he loves Halloween and she hires trick-or-treaters to come because she knows no one ever comes to the building and things like that.
What do you think? Does it really play without the other remotes? I was gonna do Iggy, but I thought it might scare the children.
Well, not that I don't enjoy you shirtless and an eyeliner, but I do think you made the right choice.
At 60, I have Gone, Maybe Gone, and this is the first episode of season 6. So this is when the gang are looking for Serena, and they find her with Stephen, as Sabrina kind of living this new life after the fallout of the season 5 finale. And this one is just really funny. We get some heartfelt moments. One of my favourite scenes is actually when Blair and Serena fight in this episode, and the voiceover says how Serena is Blair's, like the real love of Blair's life or something, or like her real soulmate, something like that. And we also get really funny moments in this one between Dan and Blair and Georgina and everybody in the cast. So that is a fun one. And we also kind of get the backstory behind why Chuck and Blair aren't together, because obviously at the end of season 5 it seems like they were finally going to be together, and then we come to find in this episode that it's a bit more complicated than that, and she has the ring but they decide not to be together until they've both kind of completed what they need to complete separately.
Fear not. I've seduced a man of the cloth before. I can do it again.
Georgina just dragged me along so I could, Oh, okay. Wisconsin? Seriously? Do you even know where that is on a map? So. Okay, I deserve that one.
You'll never guess what I found. Looks like Nate Archibald to me.
At 56, I have Juliet Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and this is season 4, episode 8. And in this episode, we have like Chuck and Blair sneaking around together, which is always funny, their little dynamic. And we also have that Juliet and Vanessa join forces to kind of start creating their master plan, and I don't know if they invite Jenny in at the end of this episode or if it's next episode, and all that kind of starts to come together.
This has got to end.
I thought it just did.
That was the last time.
At 58, I have Much I Do About Nothing, which is season 1, episode 18. And this is the finale of season 1. Again, I feel like I'm questioning my past self because this episode is also a banger, so I don't know why it's this far down. I think this just shows you how much I love Gossip Girl, because there are not hardly any bad episodes, but there are way more episodes that I really love than ones that I don't. But in this episode, it's Bart and Lily's wedding, and Dan and Serena break up. Chuck and Blair decide to be together, but then Bart freaks him out and he doesn't end up showing up. It's just so much going on in this episode, and Blair banishes Georgina, which I think is one of the most iconic scenes in television history.
Haven't you heard? I'm the crazy bitch around here. Have fun in reform school.
Yeah, this one's so good. Why is it so far down? You're fully watching me like have a crisis about my own choices right now. And then you also have the moment where Lily and Rufus decide not to be together when she stood there in the wedding dress. This episode is so good. At 57, we have The Wrath of Con, and this is season 2, episode 23. And in this episode, they're trying to take down Poppy and her whole scam. So they bring Georgina back in, and she becomes evil again.
I don't think Jesus would approve of that.
Well, you can tell Jesus that the bitch is back.
Bloody love Georgina. She gives these girls a run for their money every time. And so that's really fun, but their whole plan backfires and Serena ends up getting arrested, which again, I feel like is an iconic moment across the whole show. And a scene that I really, really love is when Chuck tells Serena that he loves Blair. Blair kind of tells him, okay, if you love me, we can work this out. If you don't, then just let me go. And he says that he doesn't. But then he tells Serena that he actually really does, and I really like that moment. At 56, we have Roman Holiday, or I think it's supposed to be pronounced like Roman Holiday, because this is the episode where we meet Roman for the first time, and this is season 1, episode 11. It is also our only Christmas episode, I believe, which is such a crime, because Christmas in New York is everything. But I really love this episode. I think it's so fun. And we get such cute outfits in this episode, all the like Christmassy vibes. If you know me, you know I love a holiday special. Okay, Halloween episodes, Christmas episodes, Valentine's episodes, Thanksgiving episodes. I want it all. I adore it. So a Gossip Girl Christmas episode is definitely just top tier. Dan and Serena getting their gifts for each other, and then when he gives her the story that he wrote about her years back when he first saw her for the first time is so sweet. And then Rufus walking in the snow to the palace and leaving Lily the voicemail saying that he wants to be with her while she's getting proposed to by Bart. The drama in this episode is 10 out of 10. This episode is so good. I feel like maybe we're just getting to the point where like I love all the episodes now, because I'm like, why is this so low? But all the Gossip Girl episodes are so good that like 50 isn't even low. And we're only like just over halfway, and I'm still like, this episode is so good.
Dorada's gonna kill you if you get glue on that comforter. Sorry we've turned your room into an art studio, B, but the clock is ticking.
At 55, I have The Dark Knight, which is the third episode of season 2, and we have a blackout in this episode. And honestly, the thing that sticks out the most in my mind from this episode is when Vanessa says to Nate, she's like, I didn't sign up to be in a love triangle with you and someone's mom. Like, so ridiculous.
Well, on the Upper East Side, that might be totally normal. I didn't sign up for some creepy love triangle with you and someone's mom.
She's giving me money.
Only 3 episodes into season 2 and already we have spiraled into just absolute ridiculousness. Like, Catherine and Nate is easily one of the most icky relationships, or not even relationships, like, because they didn't even date properly, but like the most icky connections that I've ever seen in a TV show, especially like a teen show. It was so gross. But yeah, so Vanessa finds out about that, and we have Blair not thinking there's any passion with Marcus, and she ends up kissing Chuck. Jenny is also such a cutie in this episode. I adore her. And in this episode, Eleanor kind of realizes the talent that Jenny has and hires her because she's been doing her internship there that summer. And finally, Dan and Serena break up again in the lift when they get stuck in the lift together, which is another one of my favorite scenes. And when they, you know, they both don't want to say they love each other, and then the doors close and she says that she loves him, like when he can't hear anymore. So good. At 54, I have Bad News Blair, and this is the 4th episode of season 1. And in this episode, Blair is chosen to be the new face of Waldorf Designs, but then Serena ends up being chosen instead. And I really love the end of this episode. We get to see Blair and Dan have a sweet moment where they're kind of bonding over their strained relationship with their mums, and seeing Blair and Serena be proper besties again, and the kind of iconic voiceover of S&B do besties better than anyone, or whatever it is that Gossip Girl says. I think this is just a fun, cute episode, and it's a really nostalgic one as well. It always, I don't know what it is about this episode, but it always really reminds me of watching Gossip Girl for the first time, and I just love this one. Oh, and we also meet Carter Bazin for the first time in this episode, and we love Carter.
Sure you just don't want to lose Julian, Chuck? Maybe if your daddy bought your basketball team instead of a hotel, you'd have some skill. But this is the last weekend for juniors, not senior citizens. Go jump into a volcano.
At 53, we have Summer Kind of Wonderful, which is the 1st episode of season 2. And the White Party, I think, is just beyond iconic. And the vitamin water sponsorship, like, stop. So good. It's just so gossip. It's the essence. I just love it. The White Party is such a good episode. And we also have Dan and Serena reuniting, which is really sweet in this episode. And Nate and Serena sharing their kind of first on-screen kiss that wasn't the flashback to the Campbell Hotel or whatever that was called, the Campbell wedding. I can always get those confused. I think it's the Shepherd wedding at the Campbell Hotel. But then my mind gets confused and calls it the Campbell wedding at the Shepherd Hotel. So, I don't know. It's one of those two. We get that. And obviously we get probably the most iconic scene in the entire show. Maybe I'll do a poll or something. I kind of want to start doing polls. I don't know if you guys would be interested in those, where I ask you, like, your favorite episodes, your favorite couples, and your favorite characters, like those kinds of things, and then I see what you guys say and kind of compare them to what I think. But I think this might be the most iconic moment in the show, and it's the 3 words, 8 letters, say it and I'm yours scene between Chuck and Blair. We get that in this episode, and I feel like that is just probably the most iconic quote from Gossip Girl, aside from XOXO Gossip Girl.
The only thing lamer than dating Dan Humphrey is mourning Dan Humphrey.
At 52, I have The X-Files, and this is the 4th episode of season 2. And I just love the episode title for this. If you want to know the stories behind the episode titles, I did a video on it because they're all based on movies. So yeah, if you want to go and see that, I did make a video about that and every single episode in the movie that inspired that title. But yes, so this episode is when Serena kind of starts to get her bad bitch side back. You know, old Serena starts to creep back in now that she's broken up with Dan. And then we also have Vanessa finding out that Marcus and Catherine are sleeping together, which was just insane. Insane. The way my jaw dropped when I watched this for the first time, it's so messed up. It's so messed up. At 51, I have The Blair Bitch Project, another iconic title, and this is season 1, episode 14. And in this, Bee is trying to reclaim her queen bee status that Jenny has kind of taken from her since she got like cancelled, I guess, with her Who's the Daddy scandal. And Jenny is struggling to keep up with the other minions, like her new friends, because she just doesn't have the money that they do.
Happy birthday, Jenny.
Milano's with Jenny's dad.
He's kind of a hottie.
Yeah, a hottie dad.
Rice Krispie treats?
So to try and keep up with the events that they go to and lunch and everything, she starts selling all of her things, but then she doesn't have anything left to sell. And she steals a dress from Hazel, I think it is, Hazel's mum's wardrobe that turns out to be like a one-of-a-kind Valentino. And Blair hosts this 15th birthday party for her, which is so cringe. She gets Rufus in on it. The picture of Jenny's face on the cake is beyond iconic, and they basically catch her in the dress and realize that she stole it, and Bee kind of gets the one up on her. And then Jenny actually then uses Nate to get back into the good graces. And even though she shouldn't have done that, I still always love a Jenny and Nate scene. And in this one, Serena also starts getting her packages that are labelled with like Love G, I think, that are from, as we know now, Georgina. And I also really love that. At 50, I have Woman on the Verge, which is the 17th episode of season 1. We get some really nice Lily and Rufus moments. We also get Rufus's iconic song. I tell you, this song slaps. I don't think it's on Spotify, but it needs to be because I get it stuck in my head all the time.
What are you doing here? I'm a big Leaky Hawk fan.
I also really love the non-judgmental Breakfast Club moments that we get in this episode and how they all come and rally round to support Serena, even though they've kind of got their own issues going on. But I even though it's like really dramatic TV, I really get frustrated with when Serena lies to Dan and says that she cheated on him even though she didn't, and when Dan kisses Georgina thinking obviously that she's Sarah like a few hours later. I just feel like it just destroyed Dorina, and why? You just didn't need to do that.
I thought our relationship was dead.
Well, you sure had a hell of a time at the wake.
At 49, I have The Hurt Locket, and this is season 3, episode 13. And this is the one where Jenny sews the drugs into her jacket so that Damien can deal them at this like event that they're going to. Serena and Nate are also really cute in this one. This is kind of the start of their relationship. And Chuck realizes that he thinks he's found his mum. And he says, "I think that whore is my mother." Some of the quotes from this show are so good when you take them out of context.
Don't tell me that awful whore did something terrible to you.
I think that whore may be my mother.
At 48, I have Monstrous Ball, and this is season 6, episode 5. And this is Sage's cotillion, the third cotillion that we see. And I always love a cotillion episode. You'll see, I love a cotillion episode. They're probably way higher up. And Nate is there, and we just love Nate. Nate's such a cutie at these cotillion balls. And Stephen is going to propose to Serena, but then Blair and Sage have this plan to kind of delay it, which is fine. And then we get to see Serena and Blair make up, which is really sweet. But then Sage plays Dan and Serena's sex tape on the screen for everyone to see, and it is insane. I was literally like watching it like this. I was like, no, this is so horrific. But yeah, a proper dramatic episode, this one. At 47, we have Bonfire of the Vanity, and this is season 2, episode 10, and Dan is kind of snooping around on Bart, trying to, I think he's trying to write an article on him or something, but I think this is when he finds out about the burning building, which doesn't actually get resolved until like 3 seasons later, but they planted that seed early. And we also have Agnes burning Jenny's dresses, which I still think is one of the most emotional and well acted scenes in this entire show. It was crazy that Taylor Momsen was only 14 or 15, I think, when she filmed this scene. She's such a talented musician, and I absolutely adore the Pre-Reckless, but I don't think her acting is appreciated enough. It was so good. And then we also meet Cyrus in this episode, and I love Cyrus. I adore that man. Okay, Fourth time's a charm. Also, how adorable is this? It says the Empire State, and then it says Upper East Side, New York City. When I saw it, I was like, for a Gossip Girl bitch? Yeah, absolutely. At 46, we have The Lost Boy, which is the 3rd episode of season 3. And honestly, this episode is just hilarious. It's just, like, there's not huge plot points in it, but it's just one that's really fun. We have a lot of banter between Chuck and Blair, which I always love. In this episode, Vanessa finds out about Scott being Rufus and Lily's son, which is really dramatic. And we also get to see Carter and Serena's relationship, which I also really like.
Photograph is mine.
She stole my shoes?
At 45, we have Gaslit, which is the 10th episode of season 4. This is the Thanksgiving episode for that season, and we see that Serena survived the overdose that Juliet caused in the previous episode. And we see her and Dan start to rekindle their relationship, which is really sweet. We get a nice moment between Serena and Blair. And this is also Jenny's last episode. And I just don't... I like, there's a lot of drama in this episode, but also I don't really like how this was Jenny's send-off. I think I would have much preferred if she had just left after she came back for Easy J. At 44, we have Ex-Husbands and Wives, and this is season 3, episode 21. And for this one, we have basically all of the gang teaming up to try and take down William and Dr. Holland, because they figure out that they're actually plotting against Rufus, basically to try and break Lily and Rufus up, and that Lily's cancer has been faked this whole time. Well, she had it initially in the beginning, and then I think what happened was he cured it, and then and then he told her that it had come back so that they could, start seeing each other again. Anyway, basically, there's just a lot of fun cast interaction in this one. I always love when we get to see characters that don't really, speak to each other that often, or we get, big group, ensemble scenes. I always really like stuff like that.
What brings you and your mid-level entourage? Nothing personal.
We're looking for Holly.
At 41, I have Belles du Jour, and this is the 1st episode of season 5. We get the reveal that Chuck actually is alive, because they kind of tease throughout this episode that he died when he was shot in the season finale. Also, just the whole aesthetic of Blair and Serena in Paris, I absolutely love. And we also get Blair pushing Serena into a fountain, which is another hilarious scene. At 42, we have the memoir of the Invisible Dan, I think it's called. This is the 4th episode of season 5, where Dan releases his book. Blair looks absolutely incredible in this episode. She's just glowing. In the ones where she's supposed to be pregnant, she is just absolutely glowing. I love how they did her makeup and her hair. And so we get lots of conflict in this episode, and people reading their parts of the story, which is really fun.
Might have made your character a little
Gay. Do I have game?
Oh, definitely.
Huh. I'm cool with that.
And also Diana finds out that Charlie is an imposter in this episode. At 41, we have Shattered Bass, which is the 21st episode of season 4. And for this one, Jack is back and he's now on Chuck's side, which he's hilarious as ever. And we also have the drama between the Thorpes and the Basses, and the reveal that actually Russell was the one who set the fire and not Bart. Therefore, he was the one that killed his own wife and the mother of his daughter. And because of this, he goes on a revenge spree, and he lures Blair up onto the roof, which is a really dramatic cliffhanger for this episode. I think it's probably one of the best cliffhangers at the end of an episode that we really get. At 40, we have War of the Roses, which is the 7th episode of season 4. In this one, we get a good non-judgmental Breakfast Club scene where Nate and Serena get Chuck and Blair to sign a peace treaty because they've been at war for the good part of this season. And
Did you get a haircut? Looks different.
No, just happy.
What's he doing here?
What's she doing here?
And who brought the Avon lady?
She's a court stenographer.
then we see them breaking the peace treaty and ripping it up and getting, well, not really getting back together, but hooking up. And also they're wearing basically matching outfits, the same color scheme. and I absolutely love it. At 39, we have The Witches of Bushwick, and this is the 9th episode of season 4. And this is the Saints and Sinners party, and I absolutely love it. I don't think it's technically classed as a Halloween episode, or if it's even near Halloween, but it's kind of a costumey episode, so I love it. And we see some really fun outfits in this episode. We also see Chuck and Blair be revealed as a couple, but then ultimately Blair choose herself and her own kind of journey over being with Chuck. And this is when Juliet and Vanessa bring Jenny into their scheme. And I mean, Juliet takes it too far, but it is kind of a fun scheme where they both dress like her, and it's like honestly crazy and so like crazily thought out. And then at the end, we see Juliet take Serena to a hotel and leave her there. And honestly, I think this moment and when Agnes left Jenny in that bar are two of the worst things to happen in this show, but nobody really talks about them so much. At 38, we have Damien Darko, which is the 13th episode of season 4. And I absolutely love Blair and Dan's dynamic in this episode. I think it's absolutely hilarious. They both start at W, and the way that they banter and like bicker with each other is just so good. Their chemistry as friends is just honestly unmatched.
I didn't date Serena van der Woodsen for 2 years and not come away knowing that those are Marc Jacobs and they must have. Your stupid tricks won't work.
Oh, look, it's Georgina's baby.
We also have Ben in this episode, which minus points for Ben because I'm not a Ben fan. Ben and Aaron, any episodes of theirs get minus points. And we see the return of Damien, and now Damien is friends with Eric, and it's kind of like, what does that mean? How did that happen? And I actually really like Raina as well. I thought she was a really good character that ended up being kind of, I don't even know if like misused is the word, but they kind of wrote her out before I feel like she really reached her full potential. I think she definitely could have stayed for much longer and even been Nate's endgame potentially, because I think they were a really cute match. At 37, we have All the Pretty Sources, and this is the 8th episode of season 5. And this is the episode where Louis releases all of the Gossip Girl sources. So it's a website which says every single tip that has been sent in and exactly who sent it. And the drama is so good. And it happens at Blair's engagement party, and the engagement party that Serena planned for her is so beautiful, and Blair's dress is absolutely amazing. I absolutely love it. And there's so much going on in this episode. There's also like a kind of Chuck and Dan bromance forming because they're the two that weren't invited to the party. And we get a really cute speech from Serena because she is her maid of honor. So I really liked that as well.
Humphrey, you lost? What are you doing here? You could help me overhaul my own image. You're willing to get a haircut and change your clothes? No, and I'm not sure what I can do. Who the hell are you people anyway? You're really going to make me sit here on the stairs with you?
At 36, we have Crazy Cupid Love, and this is the 15th episode of season 5. And this is the Valentine's, I think this is our second Valentine's episode. And for it, Nate hosts a Valentine's party, and everyone has to come in their kind of old school uniform, which I really, really loved because, like I said, I think I said in this video, season 1 is my favorite season. So when they wear their old Constance and St. Jude's school uniforms, it's really nostalgic and I really love it. I think, like I said, I always love a holiday episode, so that also wins points for me. But there is a lot going on in this episode. We have initially Serena thinking that maybe her and Dan could get back together, and Blair trying to set them up.
Step 1 is accomplished. The thaw has begun.
Beautiful Polish spring.
Which then unravels, and actually they end up kissing, and Serena sees them kissing. Blair looks gorgeous in her red dress. Some of the looks this girl turns out, I absolutely adore her. And then we also have Lola meeting Ivy and realizing everything that has kind of gone on, and she's a bit confused, and she's like, what are you doing here? And Nate reveals, oh, that's Serena's cousin, and she's kind of like, no. So that kind of starts to unravel in this episode as well, which is really fun. At 35, we have Where the Vile Things Are, and this is the 6th episode of season 6. And in this one, we have Rufus and Ivy are hosting, well, they co-host a art event, a charity event with Lily, kind of to spite her and try and get back at them. Lily sells her rainbow lady painting that's kind of iconic. It's been in the apartment forever. And by doing this, she accidentally sells the evidence of Bart's oil trades. Alongside this, after reconnecting and going out, Dan and Serena sleep together and kind of are starting to rebuild their relationship. At 34, we have Save the Last Chance, which is the 7th episode of season 6. We have Bart blackmailing Nate in this episode, as well as getting to see all of the queen bees of the different schools on the Upper East Side come together, or they call themselves the Dons, which I think was a really fun concept to see. But the main reason that I love this episode so much is seeing Blair's B for Waldorf Designs line, and the line that's inspired by her school uniform. And I just think it's so fun. That whole pop-up shop and how everyone's dressed and the looks and the sweet moment we get between Serena and Blair and them kind of finally making up in this season, I really love. And we also get to see Dan try and make amends with Nate and Chuck and his dad as well. And yeah, overall, it's just, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the episodes in season 6, but this is one that I do really like. At 33, we have The Handmaiden's Tale, which is the 6th episode of season 1, and this is the Masquerade Ball episode. I absolutely adore this episode. Everyone looks so good. I love all the outfits, and this is when we meet Vanessa for the first time, and she kind of creates a bit of conflict between Dan and Serena, but then it turns out to be fine. They have quite a sweet moment at the end. And we also have that Nate ends up telling Jenny that he loves her, thinking that she is Serena, and this is while Blair is kind of desperately trying to rekindle their relationship. At 32, we have Oh Brother, Where Bart Thou, and this is the 13th episode of season 2, and this is the funeral for Bart after he has died in the car accident. This is a very harrowing one. It's very emotional, especially on the Chuck and Blair front. We get a lot of intense moments between those two. We also get some really nice moments like Eleanor and Cyrus getting married, and a really sweet moment between Blair and Cyrus where she tells Chuck that she loves him and he didn't say it back. Then we also see Rufus find out that Lily had his baby and didn't tell him for all these years, and it's so dramatic. Just tell me one thing. Was it a boy or a girl? Oh! Rufu, he ate with that. So good. At 31, we have In the Realm of the Basses, and this is the 14th episode of season 2. And for me, the big moment in this episode is where Chuck is on the roof and Blair talks him down, and he says that he's Chuck Bass, but no one cares, and she says that she does. And it's a really sweet moment between the two of them. This is also the first time that we meet Jack, and for me, aside from Georgina, he's probably my favourite villain in the show. And we also have that Jenny returns to Constance and kind of the dynamic and how she's dealing with having to return with all the mean girls at school. Now we're breaking into the top 30, guys. We're breaking into the top 30, okay? We have already talked about 90 episodes of TV, and now we're getting into the top 30. And I feel like from about episode 50, like from 50 up until now, we've been talking about really good episodes. And from 30 onwards, I think is truly kind of just like the creme de la creme of Gossip Girl. And then from 15 onwards is just like, these episodes have no faults. They're so good. It was so hard once I started getting down to, like, the top 30, top 15, and then eventually like the top 5 to really narrow it down, because there is so little dividing them because they are just genuinely such good episodes. At 30, we have Daredevil, which is the 5th episode of season 1, and this is when Blair hosts her annual Waldorf sleepover, and she and Jenny get into a bit of a war playing at Truth or Dare, which is a really fun part of this episode. And also a really sweet moment is Dan and Serena having their first date, and he is trying to impress her, trying to take her all these fancy places, and they end up just going to a bar and playing pool, which we then see referenced again in season 6. At 29, we have The Serena Also Rises, and this is the 5th episode of season 2, and it's the one with the Waldorf Designs fashion show, which I adore. I love a fashion show episode. It feels so Gossip Girl. Like, it's just the quintessential Gossip Girl episode is a fashion show or Thanksgiving. Those are the two that are just scream Gossip Girl to me. So I really love that part of it. We have some Blair and Serena feuding because Serena's in her socialite era in this episode. And I also really love, I mean, you know I'm a Jenny stan, so getting to see Jenny thrive with her designs and being a huge part of the show was really sweet as well. And then this is where we kind of start to see the friction between her and Rufus and her wanting to follow her dreams and him kind of trying to shield her from that. At 28, we have Pret-a-Porter, and this is season 2, episode 8. And you guys know I love Jenny and Nate, and this is a big Jenny and Nate episode. So in this, Jenny is really starting to rebel. She's now met Agnes and is kind of coming out of her shell a lot, and we also get Jenny and Nate's first kiss in this episode, which I really love. It's a really, really great scene.
I'll let you get back to work.
Yeah, I'll see you. Bye.
That guy is totally into you.
He thinks of me like a little sister.
Yeah, a little sister he'd like to do.
No.
Another great scene that we get in this episode is when Chuck and Blair ultimately decide not to be together. How many times have I said that in this video? They're always deciding not to be together. But with this one, we kind of have the speech where he says Chuck and Blair go to the movies, Chuck and Blair hold hands. That's just not who we are. And he then references this again in his proposal speech in the finale episode. So that's kind of a cute little callback as well. Oh, and minus points for Aaron Rose. At 27, we have The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and this is the 18th episode of season 3, which is Dorota and Vanya's wedding, which is really sweet, and we get a really nice moment between Dorota and Blair. We really see like a deeper level of their connection in this episode, which I did really love. We also have Carter coming back in this episode, and between him talking to Serena and also Jenny starting to have feelings for Nate again, they create a bit of a wedge between Serena and Nate. At 26, we have Inglourious Bastards, and this is the 17th episode of season 3. I adore this episode for some parts, and I absolutely hate it for others. And not even hate in a way of like, I think it's shitty TV, but it's just so gut-wrenching that I'm like, why would you even write this? So let's start with the bits that I love. What I love is Nate's birthday party where they play the game Assassination, I think it's called. And it looks like so much fun. I want to play it so bad. It looks like so much fun. But that's a really fun scene, seeing everyone kind of run around and play the game. We also have some sweet Jenny and Nate moments, even though they're kind of tainted by the fact that she is kind of trying to break up him and Serena. So there's that. Serena's quite a sweetie in this episode. I feel like kind of around this time is when we kind of start to lose her a bit, so I really appreciate where we get to see kind of Sunshine Barbie back again. Dan and Vanessa are also very rocky in this episode because they're going through Dan's going through his whole jealousy thing. And then last but not least, probably, one of the worst things to happen in this show is when Chuck trades Blair for the Empire Hotel and she goes to sleep with Jack, but he stops before they actually sleep together and it's like, I just wanted to know that he would give you up for the hotel. And it's really, really heartbreaking, and Blair breaks up with him, and that scene where they break up is just, it's actually like so emotional, and Leighton did such an incredible job in this scene. It's so good. It's heartbreaking, but it's really, really good TV. At 25, we have The Departed, which is the 12th episode of season 3. And this is the episode with Trip and Serena's car crash. So lots of drama going on here, threatening to expose Lily's letter about William. You know, Maureen's kind of trying to win Trip back, and we have a lot going on. And then because Serena obviously gets into this accident, kind of everyone comes together, which is really sweet. And we, you know, like I said, we see a lot of big group moments. And we also have Chuck kind of being haunted by Bart's ghost. Well, not his ghost, but like he keeps like seeing him around, and it's kind of messing with his head because it's the anniversary of his death. And we get a kind of flashback to when he died, and we see a nice moment between Chuck and Blair when he is remembering that. And yeah, it's a very emotional episode. At 24, we have Father of the Bride, and this is the 12th episode of season 5. And it's a really funny one because we have Blair's bachelorette party, so she gets really drunk, and I think it would have been nice to see this more fun side of Blair a little bit more.
You worried about little old me?
B, you smell like a distillery.
I had shots. They were fun. The first 10, anyway.
Well, I'm sorry I missed.
And we also find out that Tripp was the one behind the car crash, which was insane. When it all unravels and you see his motives and then how he went about it, and it was crazy. It was like so dramatic. It was so good. At 23, we have Victor Victrola, which is the 7th episode of season 1, where Chuck buys his club Victrola. Blair finds out that Nate told Serena, or Jenny, that he loved her at the masquerade ball. We get some really sweet Dan and Serena moments in this episode. And we also have one of, again, the most iconic scenes in Gossip Girl, which is where Blair goes to the bar and she dances on stage, and Chuck kind of develops his crush on her, and they end up sleeping together, which is Blair's first time. And 22, we have New Haven Can Wait, which is the 6th episode of season 2, where they go to visit Yale, and hilarity just ensues between Dan and Nate. This is when we kind of see them together for the first-ish time, and they're a really fun dynamic, and Blair and Serena are fighting, but then they also have some really sweet moments in this episode as well. So it's got some really good comedic moments, but then some also really nice heartfelt moments.
Hope you at least bought the statue a drink first.
My mom was in the Navy. Oh my god.
At 21, we have a thin line between Chuck and Nate, which is the 13th episode of season 1. And this is where everything kind of unravels that Blair had slept with Chuck and Nate, because Serena is pictured on Gossip Girl buying a pregnancy test, but it turns out to be for Blair. And then Chuck sends a tip into Gossip Girl about it, and when he posts it initially, Nate thinks that it's fake, but Jenny confirms to him that it's real. He then ends his friendship with Chuck, as well as breaking up with Blair. And Blair decides to kind of flee to Paris until the scandal blows over, but Serena convinces her to stay in a really sweet moment that they have at the end of the episode. At 20, we have Double Identity, which is the 2nd episode of season 4. This, we have Blair in the orange dress at the train station, where she convinces Chuck to come back to New York, which is just everything. I adore that scene so much. And we also have some really sweet Dan and Vanessa scenes, where they're taking care of Milo before obviously Dan finds out that he isn't his. At 19, we have The End of the Affair, which is the 11th episode of season 5. And in this, we get a lot of flashbacks to the car crash, and we see the reason why Blair can't be with Chuck and her promise to God. And we meet the real Charlotte Rose in this episode, and it's a very emotional episode. When Blair tries on her wedding dress, it gets me every time. At 18, we have They Shoot Humphreys, Don't They?, which is the 9th episode of season 3. This is Jenny's episode, okay? She absolutely slays in this episode. This is her cotillion episode. Her dress is gorgeous. Her makeup is gorgeous. Her hair looks great. And she gets Nate to be her escort. And it's just this huge moment, and I just absolutely love it for her. We also have Chuck trapping Blair and Serena in a lift until they make up. So we have some sweet moments between them. And we also have the very bizarre threesome between Dan, Olivia, and Vanessa. At 17, we have The Return of the Ring, which is the 24th episode of season 5 and the season finale for that season. Gossip Girl starts posting Blair's diary pages that Serena had given to them, and this causes their friendship to blow up completely. It affects Blair's relationship with Dan. So then Serena kind of tries to get revenge on Blair. They're having a huge war, and she ends up sleeping with Dan and filming it to try to get back at her. Blair also decides that she actually wants to be with Chuck instead of Dan and goes and tells him this. And because everybody hates Serena, basically she's burned all her bridges, at the end we see her leaving on the train, and she has bought drugs from somebody, so we know that she's kind of going back to old Serena. Oh, and also Lily chooses Bart over Rufus in this episode. Ridiculous. At 16, we have The Wild Brunch, which is the second episode of season 1. I adore this episode. It's so good. The vibes are just off the charts with this one, like the brunch and the aesthetic of it. It's so good. The soundtrack for this one absolutely slaps as well. So good. And Serena brings Dan to Bart's brunch, and we kind of are starting to see their lavish lifestyle a bit more. There's a lot of drama, and Blair and Chuck end up telling Dan about Serena sleeping with Nate.
So you do want to talk to her?
Yes, to explain why I'm not talking to her.
To talk.
About why we want to talk.
That doesn't sound any smarter the second time.
And we also find out that Lily is secretly seeing Bart Bass. At 15, so we're breaking into the top 15 now. I feel like the top 16 is just, like I said, my all-time favourite episodes. And this one is There Might Be Blood, which is the 9th episode of season 2. And it is Jenny's guerrilla fashion show. And it is beyond iconic. Jenny Humphrey will always be famous. I adore her. She was my idol. Okay, when I watched this for the first time, I was like, I need to be a fashion designer. This gal is so cool. And still to this day, I love this episode. We get Jenny and Nate scenes in this episode, which are really sweet, and he comes to support her fashion show, and it's just so fun and it's so cool, and I just love it. We also have Blair and Emma, where she has to kind of babysit the teenager of the Dean of Admissions, I think, or something, and we get a really sweet storyline between them where they kind of bond over their strained relationship with their mums.
When he gets out, there's gonna be one less virgin around here.
You have to admire her determination.
Oh!
What? Who are you? Piece of advice, lose the tulip.
At 14, we have The Backup Dan, which is the 14th episode of season 5. And in this, we have absolute hilarity between Dan and Blair when they are at the airport, which is, I just absolutely love those scenes. We also have the drama of finding out that if Blair tries to leave Louis, the dowry will come into effect that will bankrupt the Waldorfs. And we also find out that Dan was the one who sent in the video that basically caused all of this into Gossip Girl on Blair's wedding day.
I just need your passport so we can issue the ticket. I know it's unorthodox, but this is an emergency and I don't have my passport, so I'm hoping that you will allow me to prove my identity with this.
At 13, we have Gigi, which is the 13th episode of season 5, and it is also the 100th episode of Gossip Girl. It is the royal wedding episode between Blair and Louis. We get Chuck basically pouring his heart out to Blair, and then it gets filmed and put onto Gossip Girl, which disrupts the whole wedding. We also get the reveal that Georgina is Gossip Girl, or at least, you know, we know now, like, just interiming as Gossip Girl, but that was a huge reveal. And then at the end, obviously, Blair and Louis are having their first dance, and this is when he reveals that actually he just married her because it would look bad if he didn't, and this whole wedding is a sham, and now she just has to go along with it, and she is trapped in it. At 12, we have Blair Waldorf Must Pie, which is the 9th episode of season 1. And this is our first ever Thanksgiving episode, which means it holds a special place in my heart. I absolutely love it. We get the reveal that Lily and Rufus dated, so all of the kind of kids finding that out, the drama and beef between Allison and Lily is super dramatic.
There's no chance we're related, right?
Oh, look at Eric's roots.
What do you mean? What's wrong with my roots?
The kind of Rufus like.
We have really sweet moments between Serena and Blair, where we find out about Blair's eating disorder, and we also get some flashbacks to before Serena left for boarding school, which I always like. We get to see kind of their dynamic before everything happened. At 11, we have Riding in Town Cars with Boys, and this is the 10th episode of season 5. In this one, we have Dan bringing Blair to Chuck so that they can finally be together, and Chuck saying that he wants to be with her and raise her baby, which is really sweet. So they're gonna go away together, but then they get into the car crash, which is just one of the most intense episodes of TV I've ever seen. It was crazy. Guys, we're breaking into the top 10, okay? This is mad. The top 10. I feel like I've been filming this video forever. At 10, we have Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is season 5, episode 22. And this one is insane. This one is so insane. So we have Blair kind of getting her groove back, being a bad bitch. So she's scheming with Chuck and the gang to take Diana down. So they find out that she's running some kind of weird like sex party. I think it's the same place that Chuck went to or accidentally got invited to that Bart would go to back in like season 2, I think, like the end of season 2. They go to this party and they basically try to catch Diana, but in the process, Lola is trying to prove to Nate that Serena is Gossip Girl. So they also double cross her and end up giving Serena's laptop, the Gossip Girl laptop, back to the original Gossip Girl. And this is the episode with the reveal that Bart is still alive, okay? This shit is crazy. One of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen. The way, I can't even tell you the way that my jaw dropped when I saw this for the first time. It was incredible. It was incredible. Was it ludicrous and ridiculous? Of course it was, but I ate it up. It was so good. When I like made my boyfriend watch Gossip Girl for the first time, I was waiting. I was literally like, as we were getting to it, I was like looking at him out the corner of my eye because it is peak TV. It is so good. It's so good. At 9, we have High Society, which is the 10th episode of season 1. And this is the OG Cotillion Ball, which is beyond iconic. I love the aesthetic of it. They actually play the theme for Pretty Little Liars in this as well when they're all dancing. And we get the iconic Serena in her gold dress, Blair in her silver dress, and we have Carter in this episode as well, and there's tension there. And Blair and Nate end up having sex for the first time, which makes Chuck really jealous. And Jenny is having a kind of conflict with Allison about, the Upper East Side. We get a bit of Dan and Serena conflict over Cece because it's the first time we meet Cece. But ultimately, they come back together and Lily approves of their relationship, and we get some really cute moments of Dan and Serena in this one. At 8, we have The Wrong Goodbye, which is the 22nd episode of season 4 and the season finale for that season, and it is absolutely jam-packed. We have Charlie kind of trying to steal Serena's identity, but then we find out that she's actually just an actor, and it was all a plot between her and Carol.
I'd ask how you are, but I don't really care. I haven't conspired since I convinced Dan he was Milo's dad. Unless you count speeding up the process at a hospice to get someone's apartment.
Chuck ends up saving Blair from Russell when he holds her captive at the hotel, and then they go to a bar mitzvah party together, and we have the iconic rolling in the deep scene, and they end up having sex, but then ultimately they go back and Chuck tells Blair to choose Louis, and they have a really, really sweet emotional moment that I really love. On top of that, we have Vanessa finding Dan's manuscript for Inside, and she sends it off to the publisher before she leaves for Barcelona, I think it is. And then the absolute cherry on top, at the very, very end of this episode, we zoom in onto Blair and Serena's joined bathroom, and we see a positive pregnancy test. Insane. At number 7, we have The Revengers, which is the 9th episode of season 6, and we have Chuck having to flee the country because that's the only way that he can keep Blair safe, and then they think that he died in a plane crash, but then it's revealed that he lived, and that Bart was intentionally trying to kill him. Nate also goes to jail in this episode, and we have Blair kind of rounding up her gals to take down Bart. We have Ivy, Sage, Georgina, and Serena, which is a really fun little group, and they do a lot of scheming.
Bart Bass may be able to fool the FBI, but he has never had to face off against Blair Waldorf and her bitches.
We also find out that Serena is going to be moving to LA, and last but not least, Chuck and Bart get into an altercation on the roof. Blair comes up and Bart punches Chuck, or like tries to punch him or something, and he ends up falling off of the side of the building and falls to his death. His second death of the series. At number 6, we have The Treasure of Serena Madre, which is the 11th episode of season 3. I feel like, honestly, this episode just speaks for itself. It's a Thanksgiving episode. It's the most iconic one of all time. The scene at the dinner table where Jason Derulo is playing and everyone does their dramatic exit. It's so good. It's iconic. It comes back around every year for a reason. Insane episode. So, so good. Okay, breaking into the top 5. At 5, we have All About My Brother, which is the 16th episode of season 1. This episode is insane. It is revealed that Jenny's boyfriend Asher is actually hooking up with Eric, and that makes the girls banish her from the group, so Blair is kind of back on top as Queen Bee. We also get a really sweet moment between Lily and Rufus at her wedding dress fitting. Georgina then worms her way into being friends with Dan and Vanessa using the name Sarah, which was absolutely insane, and threatens to spill a big secret of Serena's to them, but we don't know what that is, but Serena is clearly very upset about this. And then she goes to Blair. This, I don't think it's the most iconic scene of the show because there's other ones that I see posted on social media a lot more. But for me, I think it's my personal most iconic scene of the show. And Serena goes to Blair and she says, "I killed someone." Stop it right now, this show is so good. I killed someone? Are you kidding me? So good. It's insane. It's so good. At number 4, I have New York, I Love You XOXO, which is the 10th episode of season 6 and the grand finale of Gossip Girl. We have Chuck and Blair's wedding, which is really lovely. We have a kind of good combo of sweet moments and kind of little callbacks to the series, but also some really funny moments and heartfelt moments and dramatic moments. It's kind of got a bit of everything. Obviously, we have the huge reveal that Dan is Gossip Girl.
I always thought it was Dorota.
I thought it was you, Rufus.
My dad? Come on. Hey, it could have been me. I always thought it was Nate.
And I absolutely love the scene where we see everyone reacting to it, and we have loads of cameos. We see Juliet, we see Vanessa, Agnes reacting to the fact that Dan is Gossip Girl, which I thought was a really fun touch. Then we get the flash forward into the future. I loved seeing Jenny and Eric again. I was so happy that they came back for the flash forward, and we see Dan and Serena's wedding. We see that Chuck and Blair had a little boy. So it's, I don't know if it's my favorite like series finale of all time, but I think compared to some of the other ones I've seen, Little Lies, I'm looking at you, the Gossip Girl one is pretty good going. Okay, it's the top 3, guys. It's the top 3, and honestly, these 3, well, to be fair, from probably like 15, they've all been really close, but the top 3 is really, it could go anyway. But at number 3, I have the pilot, so the first episode of season 1, because it is just beyond iconic. It is truly, I've seen it 100 times. I could still watch it 100 times. It is so good. The vibe, it's so early 2000s. It's just everything. Someone saw Serena getting off the train at Grand Central, the outfits, the songs, the introduction to it all. Easily one of the best pilots I've ever seen. You know, it's the episode that started it all. It's our introduction to all the characters, the sweetness between Dan and Serena, and the drama between Blair and Serena. And, you know, we have Nate and what's happening with Nate and Serena, the kind of mystery of it all, and what happened, why did she leave, why is she back, and Chuck being like this horrible villain, and the sweetness of Jenny and the whole Humphrey clan. And it's chef's kiss. It is perfect. I don't think there's anything, I don't know if I've ever seen a pilot that gripped me like this. Maybe the Pretty Little Lies pilot, because that is also really, really good. Okay guys, my mic has died, but we're just gonna go with it because we've only got 2 episodes left, so sorry that the audio is gonna be a bit shit for the rest of this video. At number 2, I have Last Tango Then Paris, which is the 22nd episode of season 3 and the finale for that season. I genuinely think this may be one of the most dramatic, emotional episodes of TV that I have ever seen. We have Chuck going to the Empire State Building, Dorota going into labour, so Blair doesn't get there on time. He's already left when she gets there. Then Jenny and Chuck end up sleeping together, and Chuck's about to propose, but then Blair finds out about Jenny, and it's insane. We have Blair being so horrible to Jenny, and Jenny kind of deciding to leave the Upper East Side. Chuck then gets shot. It's just one thing after another, and when you think it can't get any more dramatic, Georgina comes back and reveals that she's pregnant, and it's Dan's. What the fuck? This episode, it fires on all cylinders. It's so good. It's so good. But it didn't make it to my favourite Gossip Girl episode of all time. My favourite Gossip Girl episode of all time, and like I said, it's very, very close because there's so many good episodes, but the one that I have decided to crown as the best Gossip Girl episode of all time is the series finale of season 2. Season 2, episode 25, The Goodbye Gossip Girl. This is our graduation episode, and I feel like it's really good because it's got a lot of drama, but it also has the kind of, not nostalgia because it's season 2, but like that kind of feeling of season 1 because they're all still in high school. And we get Gossip Girl giving out their awards, so Serena being irrelevant, Nate being the class war, like all this stuff, like during the awards ceremony. And then Serena decides to go on the hunt for Gossip Girl to expose who they are, which is really fun. Jenny gets crowned as the new Queen Bee by Blair, which is a really nice scene. And then we also have the drama of Blair finding out that Chuck does love her, which is a really cute moment because Serena obviously told her that he had said that. But then Gossip Girl decides, after Serena tries to come after her, to post every single tip that they've been holding back. So Chuck then finds out that Jack slept with Blair, and there's that whole drama. We then have Gossip Girl duping Serena and faking meeting up with her, but then invites everybody. And there's kind of the classic, oh, we're all Gossip Girl all together. We also see that Lily and Rufus's son is not dead. He is in New York and he is befriending Dan and has been writing him fan mail. So there's the big reveal of that. We meet that, like, Scott for the first time. And then finally we have Chuck telling Blair that he loves her, and it's such a sweet, sweet moment, and I absolutely adore it. I really do. I absolutely love it. I feel like the top 2 are easily the most emotional and like drama filled of the whole series. I just kind of had to choose whether I preferred the happier one or the sad one, and I decided to go with the happier one, and that's why The Goodbye Gossip Girl is number 1. And I put Last Tango as the second one because it just has a bit of a sadder, like darker undertone, whereas The Goodbye Gossip Girl has a lot of drama but also really nice heartfelt moments as well. And yeah, the pilot is just beyond iconic. So those top 3 are just absolute crackers of episodes, so good. So that is it. That is my ranking of all 121 episodes of Gossip Girl, from worst to best. Let me know in the comments if you agreed. What is your favourite episode of Gossip Girl? What is your favourite season? Did you agree with my kind of like top 3, top 5? Which ones do you think you would have put higher? And yeah, I am also, if you wait until the end, I am also going to be doing this video with Pretty Little Liars, but there's like even more episodes of that because obviously we have 7 seasons of that, and so that's going to be a long process, but that video will be coming as well. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. Oh, make sure you like, comment and subscribe as well.